Shadows of yesterday. The morning sun filtered through the blinds of Nathaniel Foster's downtown Portland apartment, casting geometric patterns across his drafting table. At 42, he had built exactly the life he'd planned. A successful architectural firm, a spacious industrial loft with views of the Willamette River, and a comfortable routine that kept him busy enough not to dwell on the past. Or so he told himself. Nathaniel rubbed his eyes and focused on the sustainable housing project spread before him. The city council meeting was tomorrow, and his presentation needed to be flawless. His firm, Foster Designs, had built its reputation on innovative urban spaces that balanced beauty with functionality. This project could secure their largest contract yet. "You're going to wear holes in that blueprint," said a voice from the doorway. His business partner, Tessa Ramirez, stood with 2 coffee cups in hand, her dark hair pulled back in a practical bun. "Just making sure we haven't missed anything," Nathaniel replied, gratefully accepting the coffee. Tessa leaned against the desk. "We haven't. The design is brilliant, and you know it. Are you coming to the gala tonight? The mayor will be there, and it wouldn't hurt to schmooze a little before the vote. The Greenfield Foundation's annual charity gala." Nathaniel had forgotten. "I'll be there," he promised, though the thought of small talk with Portland's elite made him wince. These events always felt hollow, despite the good causes they supported. After Tessa left, Nathaniel found himself staring at the small silver frame tucked in the corner of his bookshelf. He'd meant to put it away years ago, but somehow it remained. A photograph from his senior year at Cornell. In it, a younger version of himself had his arm around a woman with auburn hair and a smile that still haunted his dreams. Vivian Winters. It had been 8 years since she vanished from his life without explanation. 8 years of wondering what he'd done wrong, of anger that eventually dulled to resignation. Mutual friends stopped mentioning her name around him. He dated other women, had a few relationships that never quite took root. His last girlfriend, Rebecca, had ended things 6 months ago, claiming he was emotionally unavailable. Perhaps she wasn't wrong. That evening, Nathaniel stood before his bathroom mirror adjusting his tie. The man looking back at him appeared successful, confident even. No one would guess that beneath his tailored suit beat the heart of someone who still woke from dreams of auburn hair spread across a pillow. The Greenfield Foundation had chosen the historic Arlington Hotel for their gala. Crystal chandeliers illuminated a ballroom filled with Portland's influential citizens in formal attire. Nathaniel navigated the crowd with practiced ease, shaking hands with potential clients and exchanging pleasantries with city officials. Nathaniel Foster, just the man I wanted to see. Mayor Richard Dalton clapped him on the shoulder. "Your proposal for the Riverside development has many supporters on the council." "That's good to hear," Nathaniel replied, launching into a brief overview of the project's community benefits. As the mayor excused himself, Nathaniel turned toward the bar and the world seemed to stop. Standing across the room, in animated conversation with the foundation's director, was a ghost from his past. Her hair was shorter now, falling just below her shoulders rather than to the middle of her back. She'd exchanged the bohemian style of their college days for an elegant emerald dress that complemented her fair skin. But there was no mistaking those eyes, a unique hazel that had always reminded him of autumn leaves. Vivian Winters. Here, in Portland. Nathaniel's heart hammered against his ribs. The room suddenly felt too warm, too crowded. He considered leaving immediately, avoiding this collision with his past. But before he could decide, Vivian turned and their eyes met across the crowded room. Recognition flashed across her face, followed by something else. Was it fear? She said something hurried to her companion and began moving toward the exit. Without conscious thought, Nathaniel followed. "Vivian," he called out as she reached the hotel lobby. His voice sounded strange to his own ears, like it belonged to someone else. She stopped, her shoulders tensing visibly before she turned to face him. "Nathaniel," she said softly, "I didn't know you'd be here." 8 years of questions crowded his mind. 8 years of wondering why she'd disappeared without a word. 8 years of trying to forget the way her laugh made him feel. "What are you doing in Portland?" he managed to ask, his voice steadier than he felt. "I moved here 3 months ago," Vivian replied. "I'm heading the new pediatric research department at Westlake Memorial. A doctor." She'd achieved her dream. Despite everything, a part of him was proud. You look well, she continued, her fingers twisting nervously around the strap of her purse. I've seen your buildings. They're beautiful. You disappeared, Nathaniel said, the words escaping before he could stop them. 8 years ago. No explanation, nothing. Pain flickered across her face. I know, and I'm sorry. More than you can imagine. A waiter passed with a tray of champagne, momentarily separating them. When he'd gone, Vivian took a step closer. There's so much I need to tell you, Nathaniel. So much you deserve to know. But not here. Not like this. Something in her tone made his heart stutter. What are you saying? Vivian glanced around the crowded lobby, then reached into her purse and withdrew a business card. Call me tomorrow, please. Her fingers trembled as she pressed the card into his hand. There's someone you should meet. Before he could respond, she turned and walked away, leaving Nathaniel standing alone with her card in his hand and the unsettling feeling that whatever she had to tell him would change everything. Ghosts in plain sight. Nathaniel barely slept that night. Vivian's card lay on his nightstand, her name and title. Dr. Vivian Winters, Pediatric Research Director. A stark reminder that while he had been nursing his wounds, she had been building a life without him. A successful one. By morning, he had convinced himself not to call. Whatever explanation she offered now couldn't undo 8 years of silence. Yet by noon, curiosity overpowered pride. Her voice when she answered was professional but cautious. Can we meet? He asked, cutting through pleasantries. Today? They agreed on a quiet cafe near the waterfront. Nathaniel arrived early, choosing a table with a view of the entrance. When Vivian walked in, wearing a simple blue blouse and jeans, the years seemed to peel away. For a moment, she was the same woman who had sat across from him in their favorite coffee shop at Cornell, debating medical ethics while snow fell outside. Thank you for coming, she said, sliding into the chair opposite him, her hands curled around her coffee mug as if seeking warmth despite the mild September day. You said there was someone I should meet, Nathaniel replied, his tone carefully neutral. That was quite the cliffhanger, Viv. The old nickname slipped out unbidden, and something flickered in her eyes. Recognition? Perhaps regret. Before that, she began, I owe you an explanation. About why I left. Nathaniel leaned back, crossing his arms. 8 years late, but I'm listening. Vivian took a deep breath. Do you remember our last night together? Before winter break senior year? How could he forget? They'd been celebrating the end of finals in his off-campus apartment. Snow had begun falling, transforming Ithaca into a wonderland. They'd made love by candlelight when the power went out, planning their future between kisses. He'd been saving for a ring, planning to propose after graduation. We talked about our future, he said simply. Yes. Vivian's gaze dropped to her hands. 2 weeks later, I discovered I was pregnant. The words hung between them like a physical presence. Nathaniel felt as though the floor had dropped away beneath him. You were... What? He managed, his voice barely audible over the cafe's ambient noise. Pregnant. With our child. Vivian's eyes met his, unwavering now. I was terrified, Nate. We were both in our final semester. You had that internship lined up with Harrington and Associates in Boston. I was headed to medical school with a full scholarship. So you just left without telling me? The hurt in his voice was raw, undisguised. Vivian shook her head, eyes glistening. I was going to tell you after break. I went home to Philadelphia to process it, to figure out what to do. But then my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The memories flooded back. Vivian's strained voice on their sporadic phone calls during that winter break. Her explanation that her mother was ill. Her insistence that he focus on his internship interviews rather than coming to visit. She had weeks to live. Nate, she was my only family after my father died. And there I was, unmarried and pregnant, about to start medical school. Vivian's voice cracked. She made me promise on her deathbed that I wouldn't give up my dream, that I wouldn't let anything or anyone derail my education. So I was anyone? Nathaniel's anger flared. I would have supported you, Viv, whatever you decided. I know that now. But then, she shook her head. I was 22, grieving, hormonal, and terrified. I convinced myself that telling you would force you to choose between your career and us. The practical solution seemed to be handling it alone. Handling it? A cold fear gripped him. Did you? No. she said quickly, understanding his unspoken question. I couldn't. I deferred medical school for a year, stayed with my aunt in Chicago, and had our baby. A little girl. The cafe seemed to spin around him. A daughter. He had a daughter. 7 years. He calculated aloud, his architect's mind automatically doing the math. She's 7 years old, Vivian nodded. Sophia. Her name is Sophia Grace. Sophia, he repeated. The name foreign yet somehow familiar on his tongue. His daughter's name. And you never thought I deserved to know? I told myself you were better off focusing on your career. That we'd both be better off, she admitted. I went to medical school as planned, a year late. My aunt helped with Sophia. When I finished my residency, I took a position in Seattle. Seattle? Nathaniel interrupted. You were on the West Coast all this time? For the last 3 years, she confirmed. I followed your career online. Watched you become successful. With each passing year, it became harder to imagine how to tell you the truth. What changed? He demanded. Why now? Vivian's composure finally cracked. Because she started asking about you, drawing pictures of what she imagined her father might look like. And because, she paused, blinking back tears, because 3 months ago I was offered this position in Portland. When I researched the city, your name was everywhere. Your buildings, your firm. I realized we'd be living in the same city. So this is, what, fate? Coincidence? The bitterness in his voice was unmistakable. I think it's a second chance, Vivian replied quietly. Not for us, necessarily. But for you to know your daughter, and for her to know you. Nathaniel ran a hand through his hair, overwhelmed. You have a picture? Of Sophia? Vivian nodded, pulling out her phone. Her fingers trembled slightly as she scrolled through photos and handed it to him. The girl on the screen had Vivian's auburn hair, but her eyes, those were unmistakably his. Dark blue, serious questioning. She wore a science camp t-shirt and held up a homemade volcano with obvious pride. She loves building things, Vivian said softly. Models, Lego creations. She has your spatial awareness. Your creativity. Nathaniel couldn't speak. He stared at the image, trying to process that this child, this stranger, was his flesh and blood. A life he had helped create but had no part in shaping. I want to meet her, he said finally, his voice rough with emotion. She wants to meet you too, Vivian replied. She knows about you now, that you're her father, that you live here, that you didn't know about her. How much did you tell her? About why I wasn't there? The truth, that I made a mistake in not telling you about her, that it was my choice, not yours. Vivian reached across the table, her fingers stopping just short of his. I've made so many mistakes, Nate, but Sophia isn't one of them, and neither was loving you. The words hung between them, charged with memories of what had been and what might have been. Tomorrow, he said finally. I want to meet her tomorrow. As Nathaniel left the cafe, the weight of Vivian's revelation pressed on his chest. He had a daughter. A 7-year-old daughter who had been living her life entirely separate from his own. A child who shared his DNA but who was a complete stranger. Back in his apartment, he found himself standing before the photograph of himself and Vivian again. Now it seemed like an artifact from another life, one where possibilities had stretched endlessly before them, unmarred by secrets and absence. Tomorrow, he would meet Sophia. The thought terrified and exhilarated him in equal measure. How did one become a father overnight? What role could he possibly play in her life now? And perhaps most troubling, could he ever forgive Vivian for the years he had lost? The truth. Unfolded. The house was modest, a craftsman bungalow in a family-friendly Southeast Portland neighborhood, with a porch swing and a small front garden where late-season dahlias bloomed. Nothing like the sleek modern buildings Nathaniel designed. It was a home, lived in and warm, and it made his spacious downtown loft feel suddenly hollow by comparison. Nathaniel sat in his car, knuckles white around the steering wheel, staring at the address Vivian had texted him. In the passenger seat lay a hastily purchased gift, a premium architecture kit for children, the kind he would have loved at Sophia's age. Now he wondered if it was too impersonal, too obviously selected by a stranger. The front door opened before he could decide, and Vivian appeared on the porch. She spotted his car and gave a small wave, her expression a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. Nathaniel forced himself to move, each step toward the house feeling unnaturally heavy. "She's excited," Vivian said quietly as he approached. "And nervous. Like both of us." Nathaniel nodded, unable to form words around the lump in his throat. He followed Vivian inside, taking in the details of their life. Colorful artwork adorning the refrigerator, a backpack emblazoned with dinosaurs by the stairs, a half-completed puzzle on the coffee table. "Sophia," Vivian called. "He's here." A moment of silence, then the soft padding of footsteps. She appeared in the doorway, smaller than he'd expected despite having seen her photo. Those familiar dark blue eyes, his eyes, regarded him with solemn curiosity from beneath a fringe of auburn bangs. She wore a navy dress with white polka dots and clutched a worn stuffed rabbit against her chest like a shield. "Hello," she said, her voice small but clear. "Hello, Sophia," Nathaniel replied, surprised by the steadiness of his own voice. "I'm Nathaniel. I'm your father." She nodded as though confirming something she'd already known. "Mom showed me pictures. You build big buildings." "I do. And bridges sometimes. I built a bridge for my science project last year," she volunteered. "It held 14 dictionaries before it collapsed." A smile tugged at his lips despite everything. "That's impressive. I'd like to hear more about that." Vivian touched Sophia's shoulder gently. "Why don't we all sit in the living room? I made lemonade and those cookies you like." The three of them settled into an awkward triangle, Vivian and Sophia on the sofa, Nathaniel in an armchair across from them. Sophia's initial shyness gradually gave way to cautious enthusiasm as she told him about school, her friends, and her burgeoning interest in engineering. "Mom says you went to Cornell. That's a good college." "It is," Nathaniel agreed. "That's where your mom and I met. Were you in love?" The directness of the question, delivered with a child's innocent curiosity, struck him like a physical blow. Vivian intervened. "Sophia, remember what we talked about?" "Some questions might be hard." "It's okay," Nathaniel interrupted. He met his daughter's gaze directly. "Yes, we were in love. Very much." Sophia processed this with a thoughtful nod. "I asked Santa for a dad last Christmas, but Mom said it doesn't work that way. Then we moved here and she told me my real dad lived here. That's you." The simplicity of her worldview made his throat tighten. While he'd been building skyscrapers and nursing old wounds, this child had been wishing for him, a father she'd never known but somehow missed all the same. "I brought you something," he said, retrieving the package from beside his chair. Sophia unwrapped it carefully, her eyes widening as she revealed the architecture kit. "This is the one from the science store, the expensive one. I thought maybe we could build something together sometime," Nathaniel suggested, glancing at Vivian for approval. "I'd like that," Sophia said, examining the contents with obvious delight. Then, with the same directness that had caught him off guard earlier, "Are you mad at Mom for not telling you about me?" The question hung in the air. Vivian tensed visibly beside her daughter. "I was surprised," Nathaniel answered carefully. "And yes, a little sad that I missed so many years with you. But I'm here now and I'd like to get to know you, if that's okay." Sophia considered this seriously, then nodded. "Mom said you might be angry, but that grown-ups can be angry and still do the right thing." Her words hit him with unexpected force. From the mouths of babes, indeed. "Your mom is very wise," he managed. "Can I show him my room?" Sophia asked Vivian suddenly. "Of course, if he'd like to see it." Nathaniel followed his daughter up the stairs, listening as she explained the solar system mobile hanging from her ceiling. "I made Neptune too big, but Mom said it's artistic. License," and showed him her bookshelf organized by subject rather than author. "It makes more scientific sense." On her desk sat a framed photograph that made him stop. Short Vivian in a hospital bed cradling a newborn Sophia. Both looked exhausted but radiant. A complete family unit with no space left for him. "That's the day I was born," Sophia explained unnecessarily. "Mom says I came out all red and screaming like I was mad at the whole world." Nathaniel stared at the image, imagining the moment captured there. Vivian alone in childbirth. No one to hold her hand or share the wonder of their daughter's first breath. The realization pierced through his anger like a shaft of light through darkness. "Do you have other questions for me?" he asked, turning from the photograph. Sophia tilted her head thoughtfully. "Do you have a dog?" He laughed, surprised by the mundane query after such weighty moments. "No, no dog. My apartment doesn't allow pets. Oh, she looked disappointed. I've been asking Mom for a dog, but she says our yard is too small. Perhaps we could visit the dog park sometime, he suggested. See some dogs there. Her face brightened. I'd like that. When they returned downstairs, Vivian was in the kitchen preparing dinner. I thought you might stay, she said, her tone casual but her eyes watchful. Unless you have other plans? He should say no, should maintain some distance while he processed everything. Instead, he heard himself accept. Dinner was strange yet oddly comfortable, Sophia chattering about school, Nathaniel and Vivian carefully navigating around the enormous elephants in the room. As Sophia cleared the dishes, Vivian leaned closer. Thank you, she whispered, for not letting your anger with me affect how you are with her. Before he could respond, Sophia returned, announcing it was time for her evening routine. Bath, story, bed. An established pattern that had existed without him for 7 years. Would you like to read her story tonight? Vivian offered. She usually gets 2 chapters. The unexpected invitation caught him off guard. I'd like that, he said finally. Later, sitting on the edge of Sophia's bed, reading from a well-worn copy of A Wrinkle in Time, Nathaniel felt something shift inside him. This child with her serious eyes and inquisitive mind was undeniably a part of him. Blood of his blood. A life connected to his own, regardless of the years and secrets that separated them. When she drifted off to sleep, he carefully marked their place in the book and turned off her bedside lamp. Downstairs, Vivian waited with 2 glasses of wine. She's remarkable, he said, accepting a glass. She is. Vivian agreed. She's the best thing I've ever done, Nate, the best part of both of us. I missed everything, he said, the hurt finally breaking through. Her first words, first steps. Every birthday, every Christmas. His voice grew rough with emotion. You had no right to make that choice for me. I know, Vivian replied, her own eyes glistening. I thought I was protecting everyone, you, me, her. Instead, I hurt all of us. I can't undo it, but I'm trying to make it right now. Nathaniel stared into his wine. What happens next, Viv? Do we create some kind of custody arrangement? Schedule weekend visits like divorced parents who never were married in the first place? Whatever you want, she said softly. Whatever is best for Sophia. She deserves to have her father in her life. And what about us? The question emerged before he could stop it, hanging between them like a dangerous undetonated device. Vivian's gaze met his, steady, despite the tears threatening to spill. That's a different question altogether, isn't it? And maybe not one either of us is ready to answer tonight. As Nathaniel drove home later, the weight of the day settled around him. He had a daughter, bright, curious, already forming opinions and personality traits that both mirrored and diverged from his own. A child who had existed for 7 years without his knowledge, now suddenly central to his life, and he had Vivian, once the center of his world, now a complicated presence he couldn't simply cast as villain or victim. The woman who had broken his heart was also the mother of his child, a successful doctor, someone who had made a devastating mistake but was trying to atone for it. Tomorrow he would wake up a father. The thought was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Whatever anger he still harbored toward Vivian would have to be navigated carefully for Sophia's sake. The past couldn't be changed, but the future, that was still unwritten. Broken bridges 3 weeks into his new reality, Nathaniel found himself sitting in a pediatric waiting room, surrounded by well-thumbed children's books and colorful wall murals. It was a Saturday morning, and according to the custody arrangement they'd tentatively established, it was his weekend with Sophia. Mr. Foster, the receptionist called. Dr. Winters will see you now. Nathaniel followed her down a hallway lined with children's artwork to Vivian's office. Unlike the stark professional space he'd imagined, her office was warm and inviting, with photographs of smiling children, her patients covering one wall. Sorry for the weekend meeting, Vivian said, rising from behind her desk. She looked tired, her hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail. The department chair wanted these grant proposals reviewed by Monday. It's fine, he replied, settling into a chair across from her. Sophia's enjoying the children's library here. An awkward silence fell between them. These brief exchanges during drop-offs and pickups had become their new normal. polite, careful, focused entirely on their daughter's needs rather than the complicated emotions that still simmered beneath the surface. "How's the Riverside project going?" Vivian asked, breaking the silence. "We won the bid. Construction begins next month." "Congratulations." Her smile was genuine. "Sophia will be excited." She's been telling everyone her dad is building a green building with a rooftop garden. The casual mention of his fatherhood still startled him. 3 weeks, and he was still adjusting to the reality of being Sophia's dad, rather than just Nathaniel Foster, architect. "I wanted to ask you something," he said, shifting the conversation. "Sophia's science fair is coming up. She wants to build a sustainable model house, and she asked if I would help. I said yes, but I realized afterward I should have checked with you first." Vivian looked surprised. "You don't need my permission for something like that, Nate. You're her father." "On paper, maybe. But you've been making these decisions alone for 7 years. And now I'm not alone," she said simply. "That's a good thing." Another silence, less awkward this time. "There's something else," Nathaniel continued. "My mother called yesterday. She wants to meet Sophia." Vivian tensed visibly. "Your parents know?" "I told them last week. They're still processing the shock, but my mother is eager to meet her granddaughter." "Of course she is," Vivian murmured, looking down at her hands. "I should have thought about that. Your family has missed so much, too. They're coming to Portland next weekend. I know it's my weekend with Sophia, but I thought maybe you should be there, too, for the first meeting." Vivian looked up, surprised by the olive branch. "I'd like that. Thank you." As they worked out the details, Nathaniel found himself studying her face, the familiar angles now softened by maturity, the faint lines around her eyes that hadn't been there 8 years ago. Despite everything, working with her was easier than he'd expected. They still operated with the same complementary rhythm they'd developed years ago, anticipating each other's thoughts, balancing each other's approaches. The weekend with his parents proved both more difficult and more healing than Nathaniel had anticipated. His mother embraced Sophia immediately, marveling over her resemblance to Nathaniel as a child. His father was more reserved, his disappointment in Vivian evident in his cool politeness. But by Sunday, even he had thawed in the face of Sophia's earnest questions about his career as a civil engineer. "She's just like you were at that age," his mother told Nathaniel as they watched Sophia and his father examining the structure of the garden bridge. "Always asking why and how. I missed so much," Nathaniel said quietly. His mother squeezed his arm. "You're here now. That's what matters." Later that evening, after his parents had gone back to their hotel and Sophia was asleep, Nathaniel found himself alone with Vivian on her porch. The night was cool, stars visible despite the city lights. "Your parents were very kind," Vivian said. "More forgiving than I expected. They adore Sophia. That makes forgiving easier. And you?" she asked softly. "Is it getting any easier for you?" Nathaniel considered the question. "I'm still angry sometimes. Not just at you, at the situation, at the lost time. But when I'm with Sophia, it's hard to stay angry. He struggled for words. "Everything," Vivian finished for him. "She makes everything else seem small by comparison." Their eyes met in shared understanding, perhaps the first truly unguarded moment between them since her return. The moment shattered with the buzzing of Nathaniel's phone. He glanced at the screen, frowning slightly. "Everything okay?" Vivian asked. "Just work," he replied, but his tone suggested otherwise. "Nate," she said gently, "we need to be honest with each other now." He sighed. "It's Rebecca, my ex. We broke up 6 months ago, but lately she's been reaching out again, wanting to talk." Vivian's expression was carefully neutral. "Serious relationship?" "It was heading that way. Then she said I was too guarded, too unwilling to let anyone in." He gave a humorless laugh. Imagine that. The unspoken accusation hung between them. Vivian didn't flinch from it. "I did that to you, didn't I? Made it harder for you to trust?" "Maybe. Or maybe I was always like that. Either way, it doesn't matter now." He pocketed his phone without responding to the message. "My priority is Sophia." The following Wednesday, Nathaniel was in the middle of a client meeting when his phone rang with Vivian's number. He excused himself immediately, a cold dread washing over him. "What's wrong?" he demanded, forgoing any greeting. "It's Sophia." Vivian's voice was tight with worry. "She fell during gym class. Her arm is broken and they're taking her to Portland General. I'm heading there now from the clinic. I'll meet you there, he said, already gathering his things. At the hospital, Nathaniel found Vivian in the pediatric emergency waiting area, pacing anxiously. She looked up when he entered, relief washing over her face. They're setting her arm now, she said. She's being so brave, but she's scared. She was asking for you. Something twisted in Nathaniel's chest. Pain and a fierce protective love he hadn't known himself capable of feeling. Can I see her? Vivian led him to the treatment room, where Sophia lay looking small and pale against the white hospital bed. Her eyes brightened when she saw him. Dad, look. She held up her arm, now wrapped in a temporary splint. It's broken in 2 places. The doctor showed me the x-ray. It looks so cool. Very cool, Nathaniel agreed, his voice rough with emotion. Does it hurt? A lot at first, but they gave me medicine. Her face grew serious. Mom says they have to put a cast on. Can it be blue? Blue is the strongest color. Absolutely, he said, smoothing her hair back from her forehead. Blue is definitely the strongest. As they sat together while the orthopedist prepared the casting materials, Nathaniel found himself exchanging glances with Vivian over their daughter's head. Worried looks, reassuring smiles. The silent communication of parents sharing concern for their child. For the first time, he felt like they were truly co-parents rather than awkward collaborators in a complicated situation. That night, with Sophia settled in bed with her new blue cast covered in signatures from the hospital staff, Nathaniel and Vivian collapsed onto her living room sofa, emotionally drained. You were amazing with her today, Vivian said. The way you distracted her during the casting, the stories you told her. I was terrified, Nathaniel admitted. When you called, I don't know what I thought. Something worse. Welcome to parenthood, Vivian said with a tired smile, constant terror masked by a calm exterior. Is it always like this? The worry? Yes, it never stops. From the moment she was born, I've been afraid of failing her, of not being enough. She paused. That's part of why I didn't tell you, you know. Not the whole reason, but part of it. I was so scared of being a mother, of the responsibility. Adding the complication of co-parenting across different cities, different careers. I understand better now, Nathaniel said quietly, not enough to erase what happened, but enough to see why it happened. Vivian looked at him, surprise evident in her expression. That's more than I expected. Nearly losing someone has a way of clarifying what matters, he said, even if it was just a broken arm. They sat in companionable silence, the day's stress slowly ebbing away. For the first time in weeks, Nathaniel felt the wall between them beginning to crumble, not falling completely, but developing cracks that might eventually let light through. Rewritten destiny, autumn painted Portland in shades of amber and crimson as October gave way to November. Sophia's arm healed, the blue cast replaced by a smaller brace, then finally freedom. Life settled into a new rhythm, weekdays with Vivian, weekends with Nathaniel, and increasingly, moments where all 3 of them came together for family dinners, science museum visits, or Sophia's school events. On a crisp Saturday morning, Nathaniel stood in the center of a vacant loft apartment, watching as Sophia explored the empty space, her footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. It's huge, she exclaimed, running from window to window. You could fit a whole science lab in here. I was thinking more along the lines of a bedroom for you, Nathaniel replied, plus a study space for your projects. This would be your room when you stay with me. Sophia spun to face him, her eyes wide. You're moving here? From downtown? I'm thinking about it. This neighborhood is closer to your school, and there's that park you like across the street. He hesitated. What do you think? Would you like having your own space at my place? Yes. She launched herself at him, wrapping her arms around his waist. Can I help design my room? Can we paint it blue? Can I have bookshelves all along one wall? Nathaniel laughed, lifting her into his arms despite her protests that she was too big for carrying now. Yes to all of that. We'll design it together. Later that day, as they sat in a cafe sketching room layout ideas on napkins, Nathaniel's phone buzzed with a text from Vivian. Need to talk when you bring her home. Nothing bad. Something in the message made his stomach tighten. 3 months into their co-parenting arrangement, he and Vivian had reached a place of cautious friendship, the wounds of the past slowly scabbing over if not fully healed. but there remained an unspoken tension between them, a current of unfinished business that neither seemed ready to address. That evening, after Sophia had gone upstairs to organize her rock collection, Nathaniel and Vivian sat at her kitchen table, steam rising from mugs of tea between them. "I've been offered a position," Vivian said without preamble, chief of pediatric research at Boston Children's Hospital. The words landed like a physical blow. Boston, across the country. Their carefully constructed co-parenting arrangement suddenly threatened. "When?" he asked, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "They want me to start in January." She met his gaze directly. "I haven't accepted yet. I wanted to talk to you first. You're considering it? It's an incredible opportunity, Nate. The kind of position I've worked toward my entire career." She took a deep breath. "But Sophia has you here. She has the life we've built for her here. I won't uproot her again, especially not now that she has her father in her life." The implication hung in the air between them. She was considering turning down her dream job for the sake of their daughter, for the sake of the family they had pieced together from the fragments of the past. "What about a compromise?" Nathaniel suggested. "Could you split your time? Work remotely part of the year?" Vivian shook her head. "I asked. The position requires me to be on site full-time, at least for the first 2 years. So either you go and Sophia stays with me, or you turn it down and stay here. Or we all go." Vivian said softly, "You could expand your firm to the East Coast. Your designs are already garnering national attention." The suggestion caught him off guard. "You're asking me to uproot my entire life? My business?" "I'm not asking anything," she clarified quickly. "I'm just exploring all options before I make a decision." Before we make a decision. The "we" didn't escape his notice. Somewhere along the line, their individual choices had become collective ones, bound together by the child they shared. "I need some time to think," he said finally. The following week passed in a fog of indecision. Nathaniel consulted with Tessa about the feasibility of opening an East Coast branch of their firm. He researched Boston's architectural scene and housing market. He had long, honest conversations with his parents about what moving across the country would mean. But mostly, he watched Sophia, her excitement as they planned her room in his new apartment, her easy laughter as she played with friends at the park near their homes, her growing confidence as she navigated between her two parents' lives. She was thriving in Portland in the careful balance they had created. On Friday evening, Nathaniel arrived at Vivian's house for their now traditional family dinner, to find her sitting on the porch steps waiting for him. The evening light caught in her auburn hair, reminding him of those first days at Cornell when he'd been captivated by the way sunlight seemed to ignite it from within. "Where's Sophia?" he asked, climbing the steps to join her. "Inside, finishing her homework. She'll be out soon." Vivian's eyes were serious. "I've made my decision about Boston." Nathaniel sat beside her, their shoulders almost touching. "And?" "I'm turning it down." Before he could respond, she continued, "This isn't just about Sophia, though she's a huge part of it. It's about what I want my life to look like, who I want in it." Her gaze met his, the meaning in her words unmistakable. "Viv," he began, uncertain how to respond. "I know it's complicated," she said. "I know there's still healing to be done. But these past few months watching you with Sophia, building this new version of family with you, it's made me realize what matters most." "You love your work," Nathaniel reminded her. "Being a doctor, a researcher, it's who you are." "It's part of who I am," she corrected. "Just like being an architect is part of who you are. But we're more than our careers, aren't we? I think I lost sight of that 8 years ago, when I made the biggest mistake of my life." Nathaniel was silent for a long moment, absorbing her words. "I've been thinking too," he said finally. "About Boston, about what it would mean to move there, about what it would mean to stay here. And I realized something. Whether we're in Portland or Boston or anywhere else, the important thing is that we're together. All three of us." Vivian's breath caught. "What are you saying, Nate?" "I'm saying I forgive you. For everything. And I'm saying that maybe, if you're willing, we could try again. Not just as co-parents, but as..." He hesitated, searching for the right word. "A family," Vivian finished for him, her eyes shining with tears. "A real family this time. It won't be easy," he cautioned. "We've both changed. We're different people now. Better people, I hope," she said, a tentative smile playing at her lips. "Wiser, at least." The front door opened and Sophia bounded onto the porch, oblivious to the moment she had interrupted. "Dad, you're here. Can we have pizza tonight?" Mom said, "Maybe if you agreed." Nathaniel laughed, pulling her into a hug. "Pizza sounds perfect." Over dinner, they told Sophia about Vivian's job offer and her decision to stay in Portland. What they didn't tell her, yet, was about the tentative new understanding between them, the possibility they were exploring together. That would come later, after they had taken things slowly, after they had rebuilt what had been broken with care and patience. For now, it was enough to sit around the table together, making plans for Thanksgiving, for Christmas, for a future that suddenly held possibilities none of them had imagined just a few months before. 2 weeks later, Nathaniel stood in the empty loft apartment again, but this time Vivian was beside him, her hand warm in his as they watched Sophia racing from room to room. "Are you sure about this?" he asked quietly. "It's a big step." "I'm sure," she replied, squeezing his hand. "We've wasted enough time apart." The rental agreement on the table was for all three of them, a fresh start in a new home where they could build something together, brick by careful brick. Not a return to the past, but a foundation for the future. Sophia appeared in the doorway of what would be her room, her expression serious. "I've decided. The bookshelves should go on that wall and my desk under the window. And I think we need a family picture wall in the living room." "A family picture wall," Nathaniel repeated, his voice thick with emotion. "I think that's a wonderful idea." As Sophia resumed her exploration, Vivian leaned against his shoulder. "We don't have many family pictures yet," she murmured. "We'll take new ones," he promised. "Every day if you want. We have all the time in the world now." Outside, the first snow of the season began to fall, dusting Portland's streets with white. Nathaniel watched the flakes swirling past the windows and remembered another snowy night. 8 years ago, when two young lovers had planned a future they never got to live. Now, against all odds, they had been given a second chance. A rewritten destiny that incorporated the pain of the past but wasn't defined by it. The secret that had once torn them apart had ultimately brought them back together, stronger and wiser than before. As Sophia's laughter echoed through the empty apartment and Vivian's hand remained steady in his, Nathaniel finally understood what he had been building toward all these years. Not just structures of steel and glass, but a home, a family, a life filled with the love he had never stopped believing in, even in his darkest moments. Sometimes he realized the past truly did hold the key to the future. You just had to be brave enough to turn it.